The alarm clock screamed at 6 in the morning, just like it had every day for the past 3 weeks. Maya rolled over and stared at the ceiling for a moment before forcing herself to sit up. Moving to a new town in the middle of sophomore year wasn't something she had wanted, but her mom's job transfer left them no choice. She padded to the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. Her reflection showed a tired face with kind brown eyes that seemed older than her 15 years. Maya had always been quiet, but these past few weeks had made her even more withdrawn. She brushed her teeth and pulled her thick, curly hair back into a simple ponytail. No point in doing anything fancy when nobody seemed to notice her anyway. Downstairs, her mother was already dressed for work, stirring coffee and checking emails on her phone. "Morning, sweetheart," she said without looking up. "There's cereal on the counter." Maya poured herself a bowl and ate in silence. Her mom finally glanced up from her phone. "How are things going at school? Making any friends yet?" "It's fine," Maya replied, which had become her standard response to that question. She didn't want to worry her mother, who was already stressed about the new job and adjusting to their new life. The truth was that Lincoln High School felt like a completely different world. Back in Detroit, Maya had been part of a diverse community where she fit in easily. Here in Millbrook, she felt like she stuck out everywhere she went. The town was small, quiet, and overwhelmingly white. Most of the kids had known each other since kindergarten, and they weren't particularly interested in welcoming newcomers. Maya grabbed her backpack and headed for the door. "Have a good day, honey," her mom called out, already turning back to her phone. The walk to school took about 15 minutes. Maya had tried taking the bus during her first week, but that had been a mistake. The noise, the stares, the whispered comments, and it was easier to just walk. She put in her earbuds and listened to music, trying to prepare herself for another day of feeling invisible. Lincoln High was a sprawling brick building that looked like it belonged in a movie about small-town America. Students were already gathering in the parking lot and on the front steps, forming their usual groups. Maya walked past them all, keeping her eyes down, and headed straight for her locker. Her first period was English with Mrs. Patterson, one of the few teachers who seemed to genuinely care about her students. Maya actually enjoyed this class because they were reading books that made her think, and Mrs. Patterson encouraged discussion. The problem was that most of the other students weren't very interested in participating, which left Maya in an awkward position. She had plenty of thoughts about the books they read, but speaking up meant drawing attention to herself. As she walked into the classroom, Maya noticed a girl with long blonde hair sitting in the third row. This was Katie, and she was everything Maya wasn't: popular, confident, and surrounded by friends. Katie had the kind of easy smile that made teachers love her, and the kind of natural charm that made other students want to be around her. She was also one of the few people in school who had never been outright mean to Maya, though they had never actually spoken either. Mrs. Patterson started the class by asking about the homework reading. Maya had, of course, done the assignment thoroughly, but she hesitated when the teacher looked in her direction. She could feel other students' eyes on her, waiting to see if the quiet new girl would speak up. "What did you think about the main character's decision in Chapter 12? Mrs. Patterson asked the class in general. Maya knew exactly what she thought, but she remained silent. Instead, Katie raised her hand and gave a thoughtful answer that showed she had actually read the material. Maya found herself nodding along, impressed by Katie's insight. After English came history, then math, and then the part of the day Maya dreaded most: lunch period. She had tried eating in the cafeteria during her first week, but sitting alone at a table while hundreds of other students laughed and talked around her had been too painful. Now she had developed a routine that worked better for her. Maya would buy a sandwich from the cafeteria line, then head to the library. The librarian, Mr. Chen, was kind and never questioned why she preferred to eat there. The library was quiet, peaceful, and usually empty during lunch. Maya would find a corner table, eat her sandwich, and spend the rest of the period reading or doing homework. She had just settled into her usual spot when she heard familiar laughter from outside the library windows. Through the glass, she could see Katie sitting with her group of friends at one of the outdoor picnic tables. They looked so relaxed and happy, talking and laughing without any worry about fitting in or being judged. Maya watched them for a moment before forcing herself to look away. There was no point in feeling sorry for herself. She opened her history textbook and tried to focus on the reading assignment. The afternoon classes passed slowly. Biology was boring, And gym class was something Maya endured rather than enjoyed. She wasn't athletic, and team sports meant being picked last and trying to stay out of everyone's way. When the final bell rang, Maya felt the familiar relief of another school day ending. She walked home the same way she had come, earbuds in, lost in her own thoughts. At home, she helped her mom with dinner, did her homework, and went to bed early. It was a routine that felt safe even if it was lonely. That night, as Maya lay in bed, she thought about her old school and her friends back in Detroit. She missed having people to talk to, missed feeling like she belonged somewhere. She wondered if things would ever get better at Lincoln High, or if she would spend the rest of her sophomore year eating lunch alone in the library. Maya didn't know that across town. Katie was lying in her own bed, thinking about the quiet girl in her English class who always seemed so serious and alone. Katie had noticed Maya from the beginning, had seen how she kept to herself and never seemed to talk to anyone. Part of Katie wanted to reach out, but she wasn't sure how to bridge the gap between their very different worlds. Neither girl knew that their lives were about to intersect in a way that would change everything. Tuesday started like any other day for Maya, but there was something different in the air. Maybe it was the way some students looked at her as she walked to her locker, or maybe it was just her imagination. She had learned to be alert to changes in atmosphere, small signs that might indicate trouble coming her way. During morning classes, everything seemed normal. Maya kept her head down, took notes, and counted the hours until she could go home. But as lunch period approached, she noticed a group of boys near her locker talking in low voices and glancing in her direction. She recognized them: Tyler, Connor, and their leader, Jake. They were juniors who seemed to think they owned the school. Maya grabbed her lunch money and headed toward the cafeteria, hoping to avoid any interaction. She bought her usual turkey sandwich and was walking toward the library when she realized the group was following her. Her heart started beating faster, but she told herself she was being paranoid. They probably weren't even thinking about her. Instead of going to the library, Maya decided to eat outside. It was a warm day, and maybe being in the open would be safer than being trapped indoors. She found an empty picnic table on the far side of the outdoor eating area, away from the main crowds. She unwrapped her sandwich and tried to eat, but her hands were shaking slightly. Maya had been sitting there for about 10 minutes when she heard footsteps approaching. She looked up to see Jake and his friends walking toward her table. Her stomach dropped, but she tried to stay calm. Maybe they were just passing by. "Well, look who we have here," Jake said, stopping right in front of her table. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with the kind of confidence that came from never being challenged. The new girl all by herself again. Maya didn't respond. She had learned that sometimes staying quiet was the best strategy. She started to pack up her lunch, hoping they would lose interest if she left. "Where are you going?" Connor asked, blocking her path. "We just wanted to talk." "Yeah," Tyler added with a mean smile. "We're being friendly." Maya's mouth went dry. "I need to get to class," she said quietly, even though lunch period wasn't over yet. Jake laughed. "Class doesn't start for 20 minutes. Sit back down." It wasn't a request. Maya slowly sat back down, her mind racing for ways to get out of this situation. She could see other students at nearby tables, but they were all absorbed in their own conversations. No teachers were visible in the outdoor eating area. "So where are you from anyway?" Jake asked, sitting down across from her without being invited. His friends remained standing, forming a wall around the table. "Detroit," Maya answered, hoping that if she cooperated, they would leave her alone. "Detroit," Jake repeated mockingly. "That explains a lot. You people always stick together there, don't you?" Maya felt her face burn. She knew exactly what he meant by "you people," and she could feel anger rising in her chest. But she also knew that showing anger would only make things worse. "I don't know what you mean," she said carefully. Tyler laughed. "Come on, don't play dumb. You know exactly what he means." Connor leaned closer. "You're not in Detroit anymore. Maybe you should learn how things work around here." Maya stood up again, her heart pounding. "I really need to go." This time Jake stood up too, and Maya realized how much bigger he was than her. "You know what your problem is?" he said. "You think you're better than everyone else. Walking around here with your nose in the air, acting like you're too good to talk to people." "That's not true," Maya protested. "I just keep to myself." "Right," Connor said sarcastically. "Because you're so much smarter than the rest of us country kids." Maya shook her head. "I never said that." Jake stepped closer. "You don't have to say it. It's written all over your face. You think because you're from some big city you're better than kids from a small town. The situation was escalating quickly, and Maya could feel panic starting to set in. She looked around desperately for a teacher, an adult, anyone who might help. But the outdoor area was just filled with students eating lunch, and none of them seemed to notice what was happening. "Look," Maya said, trying to keep her voice steady, "I don't want any trouble. I'm just trying to get through school like everyone else." Tyler moved to block her other escape route. "Well, maybe you should try harder to fit in. Maybe you should learn that your attitude isn't welcome here." "What attitude?" Maya asked, genuinely confused. "I haven't done anything to any of you." Jake's expression grew darker. "Exactly. You haven't done anything. You don't talk to anyone, you don't participate in anything. You just sit there acting like you're above it all, like we're not worth your time." Maya realized that her strategy of staying invisible had somehow been interpreted as arrogance. In trying to avoid conflict, she had apparently created it anyway. "I'm just shy," she said desperately. "I'm not trying to be rude to anyone." Connor laughed harshly. "Shy? Right. You're not shy in English class when you're showing off how smart you are." Maya rarely spoke in English class, but when she did, her comments were usually well thought out. She had never considered that other students might see this as showing off. "Come on, guys," she pleaded. "Can't we just leave each other alone?" Jake's face hardened. "No, I don't think we can. See, your attitude is affecting the whole school. Other kids are starting to think they can act like you do. Somebody needs to teach you how things work around here." Maya felt tears starting to form in her eyes, but she fought them back. She would not cry in front of these boys. She looked around one more time for help, but still saw no teachers. Some students at other tables had started to notice the confrontation, but they were just watching with curiosity, not concern. "Please," Maya said quietly. "Just let me go." Tyler stepped forward. "You know what? I don't think you get it yet. Maybe you need a lesson you won't forget." The menace in his voice was unmistakable. Maya realized that this situation was about to get much worse. She grabbed her backpack and tried to push past Connor, but he grabbed her arm. "Where do you think you're going?" Connor demanded. Maya pulled her arm free, but the motion caused her to stumble backward. Her backpack fell to the ground, spilling books and papers everywhere. As she bent down to gather her things, she could hear the boys laughing above her. "Oops," Jake said mockingly. "Better pick all that up." Maya frantically tried to collect her scattered belongings, but every time she reached for something, one of the boys would kick it further away. Her English notebook blew across the courtyard. Her pens rolled under another table. "This is pathetic," Tyler said. "Can't even keep track of her stuff." Maya was on her hands and knees chasing after her papers when she felt someone step on her backpack strap. She looked up to see Jake's foot pinning it to the ground. "You know what?" Jake said. "I think your stuff looks better scattered around. Maybe you should leave it like this." Maya tugged at her backpack, but Jake pressed down harder. Other students were definitely watching now, some even taking out their phones. But nobody was coming to help. "Let go," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake smiled coldly. "What did you say?" "I can't hear you." Maya pulled harder at her backpack. The strap was starting to tear under Jake's weight. Around her, Connor and Tyler were kicking her books further away, laughing as papers scattered in the breeze. This was the moment when Maya realized that her strategy of staying invisible had completely failed. She was more visible now than she had ever wanted to be, but for all the wrong reasons. As she knelt on the ground, surrounded by boys who seemed to enjoy her humiliation, Maya understood that something fundamental had changed. There would be no going back to being ignored. Whatever happened next, her quiet existence at Lincoln High was over. Katie was sitting with her friends at their usual table inside the cafeteria when she heard raised voices coming from outside. She had been half listening to her friend Megan talk about some drama with her boyfriend, but the commotion outside caught her attention. "Did you hear that?" Katie asked, turning toward the windows that faced the outdoor eating area. Her friend Ashley looked up from her phone. "Hear what?" "It sounds like something's happening outside," Katie said, standing up to get a better view through the window. From where she stood, Katie could see a crowd starting to form around one of the picnic tables. Students were pulling out their phones, and she could hear laughter that didn't sound friendly. Something about the scene made her stomach twist with unease. "It's probably just some boys being stupid," Megan said dismissively. "You know how they get when they're trying to impress each other." But Katie couldn't shake the feeling that this was different. She moved closer to the window, pressing her face against the glass to get a better view. What she saw made her blood run cold. Maya, the quiet girl from her English class, was on her hands and knees trying to collect scattered papers while 3 older boys stood around her, clearly enjoying her distress. Katie watched in horror as one of the boys stepped on Maya's backpack, preventing her from picking it up. "Oh my God," Katie whispered. "What?" Ashley asked, finally looking interested enough to stand up. Katie didn't answer. She was transfixed by the scene outside. She could see Maya's face now, and the expression of fear and humiliation there made Katie's heart ache. This wasn't just boys being stupid. This was cruel. "We should tell a teacher," Katie said, looking around the cafeteria for an adult. "Tell them what?" Megan asked, joining them at the window. "Looks like the weird girl just dropped her stuff." Katie stared at her friend in disbelief. "Are you serious?" "Can't you see what's really happening out there?" Ashley shrugged. "It's not really our business, is it? I mean, we don't even know her." "That doesn't matter," Katie said, feeling frustrated by her friend's lack of concern. "She's being picked on." "By Jake and his friends," Megan pointed out. "Do you really want to get involved with that? Jake's not someone you want to make angry." Katie knew Megan was right about Jake. He was popular in the way that came from being feared rather than liked. He was the kind of person who could make your life miserable if you crossed him. Most students at Lincoln High had learned to stay out of his way. But as Katie watched Maya struggling to gather her belongings while the boys continued to harass her, she felt something stirring inside her that was stronger than her fear of Jake. It was a mixture of anger and shame, anger at what she was witnessing, and shame that she was standing safely inside while someone else suffered. "I can't just watch this," Katie said, heading toward the cafeteria exit. "Katie, wait," Ashley called after her. "Where are you going?" "To find a teacher," Katie replied, but even as she said it, she realized how long that might take. The outdoor eating area was separate from the main building, and by the time she found an adult and brought them back, who knew what might happen to Maya? Katie paused at the cafeteria doors, torn between the smart thing to do and the right thing to do. Through the glass, she could see that the situation outside was getting worse. More students had gathered to watch, some recording with their phones, but none stepping in to help. She thought about Maya in English class, always sitting quietly, never bothering anyone. Maya, who clearly loved books as much as Katie did, but who never got to share her thoughts because she was too shy or too afraid. Maya, who ate lunch alone every day while Katie sat surrounded by friends. Katie made her decision. Instead of looking for a teacher, she pushed through the doors and walked quickly toward the outdoor area. Her heart was pounding and her mouth felt dry, but she kept moving forward. As she got closer, she could hear what Jake and his friends were saying to Maya, and it made her even angrier. They were calling her names, making fun of her for being different, treating her like she was less than human. The crowd of watching students was larger now, and Katie could hear some of them laughing along with the bullies. Katie stopped about 10 feet away from the scene, close enough to see everything clearly. Maya was still trying to collect her scattered belongings, but the boys kept kicking them away from her. Her backpack strap had torn, and some of her books were damaged from being thrown around. For a moment, Katie hesitated. She thought about what Megan had said about not wanting to make Jake angry. She thought about how this could affect her own social standing, how it might change the way people saw her. She thought about how much easier it would be to just walk away and pretend she hadn't seen anything. But then she looked at Maya's face again, and all of those concerns suddenly seemed small and selfish. Maya looked like she was about to cry, but she was fighting hard not to show it. Katie could see the determination in Maya's expression, the way she refused to give up even though she was clearly outnumbered and outmatched. In that moment, Katie realized something important about herself. She had always thought of herself as a good person, someone who cared about others and tried to do the right thing. But she had never really been tested. She had never been in a situation where doing the right thing might cost her something. Now she was in exactly that situation, and she discovered that being a good person meant more than just having good intentions. It meant acting on those intentions even when it was scary or inconvenient. Katie pulled out her phone, but not to record like the other students. Instead, she quickly texted her friend Rachel, who was in study hall with her phone on. "Need teacher outside now, emergency." Rachel was the kind of person who would ask questions later but act immediately when someone needed help, but Katie also knew that waiting for adult help might take too long. She looked around at all the students who were watching and doing nothing, and she felt a surge of disgust. How could so many people just stand there and watch someone being humiliated? Then Katie realized that up until a few minutes ago, she had been doing the same thing. She had been sitting safely inside with her friends, aware that Maya was always alone but never doing anything about it. She had noticed Maya's isolation, but had never tried to reach out. In a way, Katie realized her inaction had been part of the problem all along. This recognition hit Katie like a physical blow. She had always thought of herself as different from the mean kids, but what was the real difference between actively hurting someone and passively allowing them to be hurt? Both led to the same result. Katie took a deep breath and stepped forward. She didn't have a plan, and she wasn't sure what she was going to say or do. All she knew was that she couldn't stand by and watch anymore. Whatever happened next, at least she would be able to look at herself in the mirror and know that when it mattered, she had tried to do the right thing. As she approached the group, Katie felt her fear mixing with something else, a kind of clarity she had never experienced before. For the first time in her life, she was about to find out what she was really made of. Katie's hands were shaking as she walked closer to the group surrounding Maya, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "Hey Jake, what's going on here?" The words came out more confidently than she felt. Jake looked up, surprised to see her. He knew who Katie was. Everyone at Lincoln High knew Katie. She was popular enough to be on his radar, but they moved in different circles. "Nothing that concerns you, Katie," Jake said with a smirk. "Just having a little chat with our new friend here." Maya looked up from where she was still kneeling, gathering her scattered papers. Her eyes met Katie's for just a moment, and Katie could see the mix of hope and fear there. Maya clearly wanted help, but she was also afraid that getting Katie involved might make things worse. "Looks like more than a chat," Katie said, gesturing to Maya's torn backpack and the papers scattered everywhere. "Looks like you're picking on someone who's done nothing to you." Connor laughed. "Since when do you care about the weird girl?" The casual cruelty in his voice made Katie's anger flare. "Her name is Maya, and I care because this is wrong." Tyler stepped forward, trying to intimidate her. "Maybe you should mind your own business, Katie. This doesn't involve you." Katie felt her heart racing, but she stood her ground. "Actually, it does involve me. It involves all of us. This is our school, and I'm not going to stand by and watch you bully someone." A murmur went through the crowd of watching students. Some seemed surprised that Katie was standing up to Jake's group. Others looked uncomfortable, as if they wanted to help but weren't sure how. Jake's expression darkened. "You need to walk away, Katie, right now." "No," Katie said simply. "I'm not walking away." She moved closer to Maya and held out her hand to help her up. Maya hesitated for a moment, then took Katie's hand and stood up. Her legs were shaking, and Katie could feel how scared she was. "Are you okay?" Katie asked quietly. Maya nodded, though tears were visible in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Jake stepped between them. "This is really stupid, Katie. You don't know what you're getting yourself into." "I know exactly what I'm getting into," Katie replied. "I'm standing up for someone who can't stand up for herself against three guys who think they can pick on people just because they're different." "She's not different," Tyler sneered. "She's just stuck up. Thinks she's better than everyone else." Katie looked at Maya, who was now standing beside her, still trembling but trying to look brave. "Have you ever actually talked to Maya? Do you even know anything about her?" "We know enough," Connor said. "No, you don't," Katie shot back. "You know nothing about her except that she's new and quiet and an easy target. That's not a reason to treat someone like garbage." More students had gathered now, drawn by the confrontation. Katie could see some of her friends in the crowd, looking shocked that she was involved in this situation. She could also see some teachers finally heading in their direction, having been alerted by her text to Rachel. But Jake wasn't backing down. If anything, having an audience seemed to make him more aggressive. "You know what, Katie? I used to think you were cool, but now I see you're just another bleeding heart who thinks she can save everyone. Better than being someone who gets his kicks from hurting people who can't fight back," Katie replied. The insult hit its mark. Jake's face flushed red with anger. "You want to defend her so bad? Fine. Maybe you can share her experience." He stepped closer to Katie, and for a moment she thought he might actually try to physically intimidate her the way he had Maya. But then she heard a familiar voice cutting through the tension. "What's going on here?" Mr. Rodriguez, the vice principal, had arrived with two other teachers. The crowd of students immediately began to disperse, but Mr. Rodriguez's sharp eyes had already taken in the scene. Maya's torn backpack, the scattered papers, and the confrontational stances of Jake and his friends. "Everyone needs to step back," Mr. Rodriguez said firmly. "Jake, Connor, Tyler, you three come with me now." "We didn't do anything wrong," Jake protested. "We were just talking." Mr. Rodriguez looked at the scattered papers and Maya's obviously distressed state. "Right. Let's discuss that in my office." As the three boys were led away, Jake turned back to Katie with a look of pure hatred. "This isn't over," he said quietly, making sure only she could hear. Katie felt a chill run down her spine, but she lifted her chin defiantly. "Yes, it is." After the boys were gone, Mr. Rodriguez turned to Katie and Maya. "Are you both all right? Do either of you need to see the nurse?" "We're fine," Katie said, though Maya still looked shaken. "I'll need to speak with both of you about what happened here," Mr. Rodriguez continued. "Can you come to my office after school?" Katie nodded, but Maya looked worried. "Am I in trouble?" she asked quietly. "No, honey," Mr. Rodriguez said gently. "You're not in trouble. We just need to get your side of the story." As the vice principal walked away, Katie turned to Maya, who was attempting to collect her remaining papers. Many of them were dirty or torn, and her backpack was definitely ruined. "Here, let me help," Katie said, kneeling down to gather some of the scattered books. Maya looked surprised. "You don't have to do that. You've already done enough." "I want to," Katie said simply. They worked together in silence for a few minutes, collecting Maya's belongings. Katie noticed that Maya had been reading some of the same books she loved, and her notebooks were filled with careful, thoughtful handwriting. "Why did you do that?" Maya asked suddenly. Katie looked up from the damaged English notebook she was holding. "Do what?" "Stand up for me. You don't even know me." Katie considered the question. "I know enough. I know you're in my English class and you always have really good insights when you do speak up. I know you eat lunch alone every day and never bother anyone. I know you didn't deserve what just happened to you." Maya's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they seemed to be tears of relief rather than fear. "No one's ever done anything like that for me before." Katie felt a pang of sadness at those words. "Well, someone should have. And from now on, someone will." Maya looked at her questioningly. "What do you mean?" Katie stood up, holding Maya's damaged books. "I mean, you don't have to eat lunch alone anymore. I mean, if Jake or his friends bother you again, you tell me. I mean, we're friends now if you want to be." Maya stared at her in amazement. "You want to be friends with me? Even after what just happened? Even though Jake is going to hate you now?" Katie shrugged. "Jake already didn't like me. He just didn't have a reason to show it before. And honestly, I'd rather have him as an enemy than have to look at myself in the mirror knowing I stood by and did nothing when someone needed help." For the first time since Katie had known her, Maya smiled. It was a small, tentative smile, but it transformed her entire face. "I'd like to be friends," she said quietly. Katie smiled back. "Good, because I have a feeling we're going to need each other to get through whatever comes next." As they walked toward the building together, Katie realized that in the span of 10 minutes, her entire life had changed. She had made an enemy, possibly put her own social standing at risk, and committed herself to protecting someone she barely knew. But she had also discovered something important about herself, that when it really mattered, she could be brave. And that felt more valuable than anything she might have lost. 3 weeks had passed since the incident in the courtyard, and Lincoln High felt like a completely different place to Maya. For the first time since arriving in Millbrook, she actually looked forward to going to school each day. The changes started small. The day after the confrontation, Katie had found Maya at her locker and invited her to sit with her friends at lunch. Maya had been terrified, sure that Katie's friends would resent her for causing problems with Jake and his group, but to her surprise, most of them had been welcoming. "I can't believe you stood up to Jake like that," Ashley had said when Katie introduced Maya to the group. "That was incredible." Megan had been quieter, clearly still uncomfortable with the situation, but she hadn't been openly hostile. And Rachel, the friend who had helped get teachers to the scene, had immediately made Maya feel included. "I heard you're really good at English," Rachel had said. "Maybe you could help me with the essay that's due next week? I'm terrible at analyzing themes." Maya had been happy to help, and soon she found herself part of study groups and lunch conversations. It was strange after so many weeks of silence to suddenly have people who wanted to hear her opinions and include her in their plans. But the friendship with Katie went deeper than just being included in a group. The two girls discovered they had more in common than either had expected. They both loved reading, both felt pressure to be perfect, and both had struggled with feeling like outsiders in different ways. "I know it sounds weird," Katie had confided one afternoon as they walked home together. "But sometimes being popular feels just as isolating as being ignored. Everyone expects you to be happy and confident all the time. You can't show weakness or doubt without people talking about it." Maya had never considered that popularity might come with its own burdens. But as she got to know Katie better, she began to understand. Katie was genuinely kind and thoughtful, but she was also under constant pressure to maintain her image and keep everyone happy. "At least people notice when you're struggling," Maya had replied. "When you're invisible, you can be falling apart and no one even realizes." These conversations helped both girls feel less alone in ways they hadn't expected. Maya learned that her quiet nature was actually a strength. She was a good listener and gave thoughtful advice. Katie learned that being genuine mattered more than being perfect. The situation with Jake and his friends had consequences that rippled through the school. The boys had been suspended for 3 days, and when they returned, they were on a tight leash. Mr. Rodriguez had made it clear that any further incidents would result in much more serious punishment. Jake still glared at Katie and Maya when he passed them in the hallways, and Maya could feel his resentment like a physical presence. But he had also lost some of his power. Other students had witnessed Katie standing up to him, and word had spread about what really happened in the courtyard. Jake's reputation as someone who was untouchable had been damaged. More importantly, the incident had inspired other students to speak up about bullying they had witnessed or experienced. 2 other students had come forward with stories about Jake's group, and the school administration had started taking a harder line on harassment. "You know what's funny?" Maya said to Katie one day as they sat in their new favorite spot, a quiet corner of the library where they often did homework together. "I spent so much time trying to be invisible, thinking that would keep me safe, but it actually made me more of a target." Katie looked up from her chemistry homework. "What do you mean?" "Jake said I acted like I thought I was better than everyone else, but really I was just scared. I thought if I didn't talk to anyone or get involved in anything, people would just ignore me. Instead, my silence made some people angry." Katie nodded thoughtfully. "I think some people interpret quietness as judgment. Like if you're not participating in their conversations or laughing at their jokes, they assume you disapprove of them. But that's not fair," Maya protested. "Why should I have to perform for people just to be left alone?" "You shouldn't have to," Katie agreed. "But I guess the world doesn't always work the way it should." This conversation led to a deeper discussion about how they both wanted to move forward. Maya was gaining confidence, but she didn't want to completely change who she was. Katie was learning to be more authentic, but she didn't want to lose the positive aspects of her social skills. "Maybe the answer isn't being invisible or being fake," Katie suggested. "Maybe it's about being genuinely yourself, but also being willing to connect with other people." Maya considered this. "Like being quiet because that's your personality, not because you're afraid?" "Exactly. And being friendly because you actually care about people, not because you want them to like you." Their friendship had also changed how other students saw both of them. Maya was no longer the weird new girl who thought she was too good for everyone. She was Katie's friend, someone worth knowing. And Katie was no longer just the popular girl who had everything easy. She was someone who stood up for what was right, even when it was difficult. The changes weren't just social. Maya's grades, which had always been good, improved even more as she became less stressed and more engaged with school. She started participating more in class discussions, and her teachers noticed the difference. Mrs. Patterson pulled her aside after English class one day. "I'm really glad to see you coming out of your shell. Maya, your insights about the literature we're reading are valuable, and I hope you'll continue sharing them." Katie's grades improved too, as studying with Maya helped her develop better analytical skills. They challenged each other intellectually in ways that neither had experienced before. But perhaps the most important change was in how they saw themselves. Maya realized that she was stronger than she had thought. Standing up to bullies might not be her natural strength, but she could be brave in other ways, by speaking up in class, by sharing her thoughts and opinions, by refusing to hide who she was. Katie discovered that being liked wasn't the most important thing. Being respected, being genuine, and being able to look at herself in the mirror with pride mattered more than maintaining a perfect social image. One afternoon, as they sat in Katie's room working on a history project together, Maya looked up from her textbook. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course," Katie replied. "Do you ever regret it? Standing up for me that day? Your life would probably be easier if you hadn't gotten involved." Katie put down her pen and looked at Maya seriously. "You want to know the truth? That day was one of the most important days of my life. Not because of what I did for you, but because of what I learned about myself." Maya waited for her to continue. "I learned that I could be brave when it mattered. I learned that doing the right thing feels better than being comfortable. And I learned that real friendship, the kind where you actually know and care about each other, is better than being popular with people who don't really know you." Maya smiled. "I learned something too. I learned that I don't have to choose between being myself and connecting with other people. I can be quiet and thoughtful and still have friends. I can be different and still belong somewhere." As the school year continued, their friendship became a model for other students. They showed that kindness was stronger than cruelty, that standing up for others was worth the risk, and that differences could bring people together rather than drive them apart. Maya still ate lunch with Katie and her friends, but now she also felt confident enough to talk to other students in her classes. Katie still maintained her social connections, but she was more selective about which relationships she invested in, focusing on people who valued authenticity over appearances. And on days when Jake or his friends shot them dirty looks in the hallway, Maya and Katie would catch each other's eyes and smile. They had faced their fears together and discovered that they were stronger than they had ever imagined. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as friends, and that made all the difference. But Agent Chen also had a surprising proposal for David. Her undercover assignment was ending with the conclusion of the investigation, and she would be returning to regular duties with the Federal Cybersecurity Task Force. However, she had been impressed by TechGuard Solutions' work and was interested in exploring opportunities in the private sector. She asked if David would consider hiring her as his new chief security officer. The offer was unexpected but incredibly appealing. Agent Chen had demonstrated skills and knowledge that went far beyond what David could hope to find in the conventional job market. Her experience with federal cybersecurity operations, combined with her intimate knowledge of the threats facing his company, would make her an invaluable addition to his team. David realized that hiring Agent Chen would solve several problems simultaneously. TechGuard Solutions needed someone with her level of expertise to help them defend against increasingly sophisticated threats. Her federal connections would provide ongoing intelligence about emerging cybersecurity challenges, and her presence would send a strong message to potential attackers that his company was serious about protecting its valuable technology. The logistics of the transition would be complex, requiring Agent Chen to complete her federal assignment and go through proper channels to join the private sector. But both David and Agent Chen were enthusiastic about the possibility of continuing their professional relationship under more normal circumstances. 3 weeks later, after the coordinated international arrests had successfully dismantled the hacking group, David found himself sitting in the same booth at Mel's Corner Diner. But this time, instead of working alone on his laptop, he was joined by his new chief security officer, formerly Agent Chen, now simply Lisa to her colleagues at TechGuard Solutions. The diner had returned to being a peaceful place where David could work without worry. The threat that had loomed over his company for months had been eliminated, and TechGuard Solutions was now protected by one of the most qualified cybersecurity professionals in the country. The waitress who had once watched over him secretly was now his business partner, working openly to ensure that his company's valuable technology remained secure. As David reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had brought them together, he couldn't help but smile at the irony. His suspicions about Luna had been completely justified, but for entirely the wrong reasons. She had indeed been deceiving him about her true identity and secretly accessing his computer systems. But instead of being the threat he had feared, she had been the protection he hadn't known he needed. The story of how a CEO discovered his waitress hacking his computer had become the story of how that same CEO found the perfect partner to help his company navigate an increasingly dangerous digital world. And it all started with a simple feeling that something wasn't quite right during a routine lunch break at a small neighborhood diner.